He wasn't famous. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't even supposed to be there. But in the blink of an eye, the entire world knew his name. Tyler James Robinson, just 22 years old, a quiet young man from St. George, Utah, became the center of one of the most shocking crimes of this decade. A kid who grew up almost invisible, now accused of pulling the trigger that silenced a national figure. The question is, how does someone so silent become so dangerous? Tyler's story begins like so many others. A boy growing up in the dry heat of Utah. Neighbors remember him as quiet, polite, the kind of kid you wouldn't notice twice. Teachers called him smart but distant. He never raised his hand in class. He never started trouble. He never really lived out loud. While other kids went to football games and dances, Tyler stayed home. Hours locked in his room, his pale face lit by the glow of a screen. The internet became his best friend, his escape, his universe. And sometimes, the internet doesn't just entertain you. Sometimes it reshapes you. Because online, Tyler wasn't invisible. Behind a username, behind a keyboard, he had a voice. He found corners of the internet filled with anger, frustration, and bitterness. He didn't have to speak much, just read, absorb, scroll, repeat. And the deeper he went, the darker it got. Strangers told him the world was broken. Strangers told him enemies were everywhere. Strangers whispered that action was the only way. Tyler didn't shout back. He just soaked it in like a sponge, filling himself with rage he didn't yet know how to release. By the time he turned 20, people noticed something had shifted. He wasn't just quiet anymore. He was gone. Friends stopped hearing from him. His family saw less of him. The boy who once hid in his room was now building walls around his entire life. Online, though, his words grew sharper. His tone turned hostile. He argued, lashed out, spit venom into the void. Was it politics? Was it mental illness? Or was it just a lonely young man trying to matter in the only world he knew? Whatever it was pushing him closer to a line he was about to cross. And then came the weapon. Not a random choice, not a spur of the moment. A Mauser Type .30-06 bolt-action rifle. Precise, powerful, designed for distance. You don't just pick that up by accident. You study it. You prepare for it. Police would later find it wrapped in a towel, fingerprints and DNA all over. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't impulsive. This was deliberate, calculated, planned. On September 10th, 2025, Tyler put that plan into motion. The American Comeback Tour was underway at Utah Valley University. Hundreds of students gathered under a white tent, debates, laughter, questions filling the night air. No one noticed the figure up on a rooftop 142 yards away. Tyler looked down the scope. One breath, one squeeze of the trigger, one bullet. In an instant, history shifted. Panic tore through the crowd. Screams, sirens. A life ended, and Tyler James Robinson vanished into the night. But he didn't vanish completely. He left behind his fingerprints, his DNA, his rifle. 2 days later, the hunt ended. September 12th. Police closed in. No resistance. No dramatic chase. Tyler didn't fight, he didn't run, he didn't even speak. They say he looked calm, empty, as if everything he had to say had already been said with a single shot. And that's the haunting part, the question that refuses to die. Why? Was this political? Was this personal? Was this despair turned violent? Tyler hasn't confessed. He hasn't explained. His silence screams louder than any speech he could ever give. And in that silence we're left to imagine. Was he a radical, a broken mind, or just a lonely kid who finally found a way to make the world notice him? Tyler James Robinson, 22 years old, once a boy no one remembered, now a man the world will never forget, a ghost raised by screens, shaped by anger, and hardened by loneliness. His trial will decide his fate, but his story is already written, because monsters are not always loud. Sometimes they are silent. Sometimes they grow in the shadows, hidden in bedrooms where no one checks in. And sometimes they wait, quietly, for their one moment to step out of obscurity and into infamy. That night in Utah, Tyler James Robinson didn't just end a life. He ended his own, not with death, but with a choice that forever chained him to a single word: murderer. And as the world looks at him now, we're left to wrestle with a terrifying truth. Evil doesn't always come crashing into the room. Sometimes it walks in softly with a face you'd never expect.